Hey, that's really nice. It does, yeah. Well, it's just all the emails.
I know. All right. Putting it together.
So much in winter, so there wasn't much hay in that.
I know, it's scary.
Might be a long winter.
Oh, she's like out of town.
We have really bad Miller moths in our house. And there's like an old wives' tale or that on years that those are bad, we're going to have a worse winter.
Yes.
I don't know if there's anything to it, but we've got them bad at our house.
Let me just.
I was watching.
They don't usually do that.
Cooler at night, you can tell for sure,
Yeah, I used to at one point.
which I don't mind. I'll take a
Yeah.
There we go.
little bit
Yeah,
cooler.
Yeah.
In fact, that week we had over 100, that was early, but it was
Oh, well, I was gonna say,
over 100 days.
Right.
yeah, we talked.
So glad it didn't last.
Oh, you did?
Need to call my wife. Pick me up after.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Where do I need to go?
No kidding.
No wonder they oh, that's why. Yeah, cause so they have mics, cause I couldn't hear her very well. She doesn't have a mic.
I should have brought some.
But then Chris stood up.
myself.
Oh, yeah. Well, I wanted to, I had some competing ones, but you know, if I'm sitting on
The time out, sure.
Thanks.
You're like,
Oh,
hi.
I didn't think you. What? I can't read your lips.
Can you, very well, thank you.
You don't have, you just.
Kids are doing well?
Ready.
Yeah. Can I do the first?
No, only for the.
No, you're gonna be a freshman.
Freshman?
Yeah. So, and of course, no softball this spring, but at least it was 8th grade, and hopefully brings her to play.
Well, you can sit way over there. I don't know.
They can't see you. They focus on that chair.
Yes, this is. They need Kelsey.
Wait, why do they?
Well, she's like, what's her last name? I'm like,
That's where they.
McCullough.
Are you guys, you never stop?
That's where I see it a lot.
Oh, the thing.
All the things.
Kelsey, let's go over there. I don't want to be at the thing. I sit here. Where's the TV? They focus on that chair, and I will be right behind you.
Here, I'll look good. Sit here. Good, and I like. I'll switch. You want to be on camera? I'll be on camera. No, that's not that far. That's. No, I hate that. I'll wave. You were a hot mess.
What was she gonna say? She was trying to say something we walked in.
Oh, I have no idea.
Oh, was it good?
Oh yeah, she's actually pushing the chairs together.
Me too. This is the all I needed.
I am, yes.
Okay, let's do this. All right, here we go. Good evening. We're going to depart from our traditional beginning to the meeting because this is our first meeting without Mr. Fish. And we mourn his passing along with his family, and we'd just like to take just a moment of silence for him. respect and know that Mr. Fish's family does as well. We'd ask you to please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 1.3 is approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the agenda is approved. Item 1.4 is input from the public. This is a period devoted to comments by the general public, if any, and discussion of those comments. In the interest of privacy and due process, the public is requested to not raise personnel issues except in a legally noticed closed personnel session of the board. No action may be taken upon a matter raised. I have a request here from Caroline Hicks.
Yeah.
Please join us up here
Okay,
and share your thoughts.
is it best to keep the mask on or take it off?
I think everyone can hear you better, but I don't know whichever. You can talk loud or
Okay.
pull it off to talk, so we can hear
I
you.
feel like I won't pass out if I have more oxygen, if that's okay. Okay, so I'm Caroline Hicks, and I'm here today just with the intent on working together to get our children back to school without restrictions like we all want. And so we're here, we're part of the people that were gathering outside, and so I wanted to just read what we had to explain our purpose and our goals for doing that today, so you guys understand why we did that. Our purpose in gathering outside is still let the Elko County School Board know that a substantial number of parents are opposed to having their sons and daughters wear cloth face coverings or masks in school. There are many different reasons for opposition. Some feel it's unhealthy for their child to be wearing a mask all day. Others believe that it's going to be an emotional burden for students at varying levels of distress. Whatever the individual reason may be, we ask that families are given the right to choose whether or not child wears a mask while attending public school in Elko County. Families should have the ability to choose what is best for their child when it comes to wearing a face mask in school. It is our understanding that the governor has allowed each of the individual schools in the individual districts to develop a plan that best suits their community. We also understand that local school districts have to follow declarations, mandates, guidelines set forth by the State Department of Education. Therefore, our goal tonight is to support the board in getting students back to school without masks as soon as possible in whatever capacity that may be. We could start with masks being optional in the classroom when social distancing is already taking place. We assume that students currently will not be required to wear masks outdoors. I'm assuming we'll find out about that tonight. Those kinds of things. We understand that some restrictions and precautions are definitely necessary. But as soon as we as a district are able, we would like each individual family to have the choice to wear a mask or not at school. We believe that giving parents the right to choose whether or not they wear one does not come as a detriment to the health and safety of teachers, since they too can choose what is best for their health. All teachers should be allowed to choose what is best in regards to wearing a mask at school, as well as choosing to teach in the manner they prefer, behind a face covering or not. We believe that the quality of education the students will receive while wearing masks will be considerably lower than if they did not have to wear a mask. We value both the health and education of our community and absolutely want teachers to feel protected. For that reason, we ask the board to support our request to let the choice to wear a mask or not take place as soon as medically and legally possible, even in the smallest capacity. We're here to help you help us. So we want to work together. This isn't us against you. I am a substitute teacher. From my own personal perspective, it's going to be very difficult for me to walk into a classroom of students I'm not familiar with and try to engage with them with my face covered. For younger kids, I need my expressions. I need to be loud. For the older kids, my facial expressions are what save me in communicating with them and them not walking all over me, gaining their respect. I need those facial expressions. Since subbing for me actually is not an income we depend on in my family, it's going to be very difficult for me to want to sub this year with the face mask restrictions. I love being around kids and teenagers and enjoy giving relief to the teachers so that they can be gone when they need to be gone, but I would prefer to stand in front of their classes and dozens of students without wearing a mask. So in conclusion, I just have 3 questions for the board. Is now an appropriate time to ask those and have you possibly answer them?
Go ahead and ask. We might have answers when we get to item 2.1.
Okay.
Before you do that.
Okay, so the first one is, and could you please explain if our local school district has been given the ability by the state to come up with a plan that best suits our community, why do we need to comply with state mandates?
And that will definitely be answered in 2.1. So you gotta
Okay.
keep going.
Great.
If there's one that won't, we'll go for there.
Okay, we just want to make sure everybody understands that, the answer to that question and why we all are going to be wearing masks. We understand that's going to happen, but we want to hear it from you. Okay, number 2, survey results, the survey that was sent out, those results are the ones I'm talking about, show that the majority of parents, students, and teachers do not feel masks are necessary. Would the board be willing to request a variance to have masks worn only when social distancing is not possible? This is currently happening in Minden Public School District in Douglas County. So would you be willing to request that at some point in time? That's the question.
I say that will be answered too, but I think there's a lot of things we'd like to request.
Okay.
There are, and if you don't mind,
Go ahead.
I can
Okay.
at least speak to that one. The directive that I'm gonna be mentioning tonight, the Directive 28, does give the ability for some variances.
Yes.
And so we're collecting the information, we have to go through a process, and one of them starts with talking to our county health official
Yeah.
about whether or not we would be able to qualify for a variance, but we are looking into the application
Okay,
for a
great.
variance on some of the restrictions. I honestly don't know if the wearing of a mask is something that falls under that variance, but it is certainly something that we can explore.
Okay, that would be great, because I did read the directive and I was confused about that as well. I wasn't sure if the variance request did apply to masks, but I wasn't sure if it hurt to ask or
Right.
to request or to show that there are a substantial amount of people that would like this to start in some smallest capacity, as in when social distancing is taking place.
Right,
That kind of a
As
thing.
I understand it, it's a variance for some of the restrictions, and one of the ones that they primarily are addressing is the 50% capacity,
Okay,
that restriction.
yeah,
It doesn't really speak to the masks.
right.
As far as being able to get a variance. But as you said, if you don't ask, you don't know. So
That's
I'm
what
happy
I'm
to-
hoping we could do. That would be
Sure.
great. Okay. And then the third question is, would you be willing to conduct another survey after 4 to 6 weeks of executing the hybrid model to see what parents, students, and teachers are feeling about this restricted learning? Could the survey results be shared with the State Department of Education and Governor in order to voice our educational community's preferences and hopefully implement desired changes?
If you don't mind, I'll jump in
Go for
again.
it.
Thank you.
You know, we've been talking about surveys and how important it is that we put out surveys to get information, because the temperature of the community changes.
Yeah.
And so once we get the plan up and going and we're in school, we need to keep taking that temperature.
Okay,
And we need to know where we need to make improvements, because we don't expect to launch any plan
Mhm.
and have it be 100%.
Of course.
So we just want to be real honest with you right now. It's not going to be 100%.
of course.
And the way that we're going to improve it is by getting input from the community.
Okay, that's good to
So
know.
all along we'll be doing it, and we shared the results. There's no reason not to share the results, certainly with the community. But we're constantly talking to the Department of Education, and they are asking for our opinion. and our
Great.
input.
So did you already have in mind kind of like that 4 to 6 week period, or just were you gonna play it by
We
ear?
didn't really have a time period, but we've been talking about, matter of fact, there's a survey you guys are working on right now that,
Yeah,
for some things.
We are currently working on a survey, in particular aligned to enrollment into our virtual academy, about why parents are choosing to enroll in the virtual academy as opposed to going back to traditional school setting under the hybrid model. One of the questions we're asking, is it because of masks? Is it because you don't want your kids wearing masks to school? That survey, again, it's going primarily out to NNDA, but through discussions, we could definitely expand that, and see what else is going on.
Yeah, that would be great. I just know as a parent, usually about 4 weeks into the school year, I want to have contact with the teacher one-on-one. Usually the parent-teacher conferences in October are too far for me. And so I'm ready to already talk to the teacher and explain, I already have a feel for how this is gonna go this year. Let's talk about how my kid's gonna do. And so that's where my 4 to 6 weeks kind of came from. It's just from personal experience with getting going with school. So I thought that might be a good starting point to hear back from all of us in the future. So thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. We all appreciate it. Thank you,
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Just for clarification purposes? You cited Douglas County.
Yes.
When did that go into effect? Because I'm looking at their website and it says they're doing distance learning.
So I have a document on my phone that shows that a specific Minden school, public school specifically, they are the ones that they have this list of what they're going to do in their plan, their school plan going back to school, and on there it said no masks unless social distancing is in
Maybe
place.
Specific to Minden. I'm just looking at a Douglas school district and it says that.
Yeah, it had a Minden public school logo on it, and so I could definitely share that with you guys because yeah, we want.
I would love to see that so I can read it and
Yeah.
see how they're
that would
handling this.
Okay, we will get that to you when we're done. I guess is that appropriate? Okay.
That's totally appropriate.
Okay. Thank you.
And thank you for sharing your feelings and your opinions, and I talked to the officers as I came in and they said, you guys did a protest like you should, so well done.
Thank you.
We appreciate your opinions and appreciate your presentation and your questions, thank you. That's helpful to guide everybody. All right. Any other public comment? All right,
I have some.
okay.
Kim Merrill, thank you for your commitment to our students and schools. Even this late into the evening, you're troopers. I've got my IT specialist here.
Yeah, I'm a specialist.
Okay, this one's from Jessica Johnson. I'm writing to you today very concerned about the hybrid model. As a teacher, we're getting a lot of extra work put on our already busy plates. This I do not mind at all, as I want to be able to get learning opportunities out to the students throughout the district. But my biggest concern is time. When are teachers supposed to plan, prep, grade, and do all the other duties, including teach on this type of format without added preparation time? Online teaching and video recording takes a good deal of time. There is no way I can get all of this done on my prep time 4 times a week at my school. Before and after school, there is also minimum time due to duties and preparing the room for the day. I don't see why it would be a bad idea to do 1 full day for teachers and staff, 1 day a week while working within the hybrid model. This way, students are still completing learning material and interacting with their teacher, but the teacher also gets the time they need to prepare adequate lessons, both in person and online. They also will be able to grade and provide feedback to their students. This model also allows the parents to know exactly what 2 days of the week their child goes to school, eliminating confusion and easing finding childcare. It stays consistent both for the students, parents, and teachers. I understand the current model provides the most contact time in person, but that contact time will be wasted if teachers are not given the time they need to prepare great lessons and learning opportunities. I hope as a board you will consider this and ask the committee to reconsider. This also would not be as much as a struggle if we were still be allowed 1 early out a week. Without this day, when the teachers have time to collaborate or to earn professional development, that time was also a great time to share and create lessons. Thank you. Okay.
David first.
David Freistroffer. Okay, I'm commenting in support of the modification of the school reopening plan to reflect current restrictions as defined in the Nevada Governor's Directive 028 and subsequent directives specifically. I support making wearing masks mandatory in schools and all school activities. Additionally, I support the creation of strong, clear guidelines and/or policies towards empowering our school principals to enforce mask wearing. Is the district considering having elementary kids attend school full-time? If the district of the size of Washoe is doing it, why can't Elko consider it? How are the high schools planning their online portion? Do they live stream each of the individual classes, or is it self-paced those days? That is a lot of continuous screen time if they live stream. Are high school teachers responsible for disinfecting each class after each class period? That is a lot for them to get done in a small amount of time. Disinfect, prep for next period, use restroom themselves. Are we considering their mental well-being? What is going to happen if our country is continually hit 2 of the 3 marks, our county is continually hitting 2 of the 3 marks set forth by the governor? Does that force us to distant learn? How many positive cases or school cleaning closures before distance learning is enacted? That last one actually was from Jamie McNally. How many positive cases or school cleaning closures before distance learning is enacted?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Toomey. And I believe, again, many of those questions will be answered shortly.
Thank you, Mr. Walls.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other public comment?
Teresa,
Yes,
I have a
please.
couple, but can I wait and see if you answer them?
Absolutely, that would be great. Yes, we have public comment at the end, so you're always welcome to wait until the end in case your questions aren't answered. Thank you for asking. All right, we'll move on to item 1.5, receive a presentation from Great Basin College.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for letting me come and talk to you about Great Basin College. Can you hear me okay, or do I? Can you hear me? Well, I'm Mary Doucette, and I'm the Dean of Arts and Sciences. How I got here was 20 years ago. I came with my husband, and I started as the director of Northeastern Nevada Regional Hospital and helped move the hospital over to the new location and designed the imaging center. Then in 2006, I was lucky that Great Basin College called me to start a radiology program. So I've been at Great Basin College for 14 years as the program director. And then last year, I was lucky enough to become Dean of Arts and Sciences. The very first day, my boss came up to me and said, well, you're responsible for dual enrollment. So I went, okay, I'm happy to do that. I've done a lot of things, I can do that. And I'm a parent. So I had 2 kids go through Elko County School District. They've gone to Great Basin College, got their Associate of Arts, transferred to UNLV and UNR, and they have master's degrees from UNR. So Elko County School District, awesome job. And I now have 2 more children, and one of them is in dual enrollment. So we started the dual enrollment before I became dean. So I really had no idea what I was doing. And I found it somewhat confusing before that. So my goal for this year is to work with the school districts. One of the first things I did was to contact all the superintendents, ask them what they need. What are we doing good? What do we need to improve? So that's what I'm trying to go through, is tell you what we've done so far and where we think we're going to go in the future, with everybody's help and cooperation. One of the first things that was confusing, dual enrollment versus dual credit. So the student can be enrolled in both places, but not get credit in both places. So the program that we have with the high schools are that they have to have dual credit. So they enroll in both places, they'll get recognized for that credit at the high school and at the college. But if the student doesn't get the dual credit, they can still enroll as long as they meet the criteria for that. And they'll have credit at college, but not necessarily at the high school. Unfortunately, tonight I have to inform you that the college and career readiness grant that we normally have, that pays for half of the credits. It was cut in this last session, special session, so we did not get the money for this year. However, Great Basin thinks it's important, so we have 50% off of our tuition. And we're gonna continue that. The other thing I heard today, right before I left, so that was good news. I have good news. CTE, our career and technical education, they have some grants that'll hopefully pay for some of their students that they're researching. And also our foundation is possibly going to cover the other part. So we're crossing our fingers that that's going to go through, but there's no guarantee. So what does a student have to do? They have to enroll at GBC. And the paperwork is on you just go to our webpage, type in dual enrollment, so it's easy there. We've worked with the high schools this year to get those forms together so that everybody's kind of using the same process, because that's what I found, it was different for each high school. So we're trying to streamline that a little more. Testing AccuPlacer or their SAT and ACT, they could bring those with them so we know whether they go into English 100, English 101, math, where they start at. Now, one of the things NSHE is doing is that they're changing. They gave a mandate that we have to use Co-Requisite Model, and that will start in fall of 2021. The Co-Requisite Model is so that we can remediate that student at the same time. So the nice thing about that is a student could come from high school, go right into English 100, it's a 5-credit class, but they don't have to take all the developmental to get there. So they'll just take that 5-credit class, get the remediation while they're going, and that will be the same with math. We're piloting some of those classes this semester, so we hope that'll be successful. This year, we did the Certificate of General Studies. I worked with Chris and a lot of the other superintendents. And what we came up with was a pathway. Because what we felt didn't happen is a lot of students enrolled, but they had no idea what to enroll in to get them somewhere from point A to point B. So we came up with a Certificate of General Education. It's 30 credits of general education that will transfer to any school in the state of Nevada. We have common course numbering. So if you take English 101 here, you're going to have English 101 at UNLV, UNR, wherever they transfer to. This part provides that dual credit pathway, so they'll get the high school credit and they'll get the college credit. It provides a sense of accountability and independence. It documents milestones. It preps for the rigor of college. Because one of the things the student doesn't understand is that college teacher isn't going to call them and say, hey, you missed this. Hey, you need to do better here. So it will help them understand that they need to advocate for themselves. It provides a connection and pathway for students to seek help. I have a dual enrollment student, and I'm constantly, did you ask the instructor? You need to email them. And honestly, I have to admit, I was a helicopter parent first time around. So I'm trying to step back and tell them, you need to do this, because that will help them in the future. It builds the bridges. The best thing about this job for the last year is I've got to meet some amazing people. They have taken their time to educate me on dual enrollment and what happens at the high school level, and they've been awesome. So it's been great to work with, and it builds those bridges. Also, this certificate built that 1 year for the Associate Arts degree. So now what we're looking at is, can we build that 1 year for the Associate of Science? I'm working with Brian. We're looking at doing something for education for teachers. Maybe we can get that first year done on their world to be a teacher, get them out faster. Because I know we have a shortage, right? So this year they're starting with History 101 and 102. They're doing fine art. I can tell it's been popular because we have approximately 100 more dual enrollment students in History 101 than we had last year. So I'm assuming that's what it is, but that's what the data is showing us. So we defined the pathway through all of that. So the student can easily find that on our website. and be able to follow that and also talk to their counselors, because a lot of times giving the counselors the things they need will help with success. The expectation for the professors. Professors put all information into a course syllabus. I didn't go to a college program until I was in my 40s. I had no idea what the syllabus was. I became an X-ray tech at a technical school, so I had to learn all these things that are needed there. Lucky for me, they had a guideline. They will not follow up with the students to make sure the student turns in an assignment. A lot of them don't do extra credit. I'm making them sound bad that they're not going to help you, but they will. If the student approaches them, everybody wants to help you succeed. But we also want to press that all communication should go through the instructor, so you learn to work that out. FERPA. So a parent or a mother calls me, I can't talk to them about their student. Regardless of their age, I still have to hold that confidential unless we have a signature that releases that information. So we need to make sure those parents know that. And that's in actually the form, so. And that's my presentation, and I'm happy to take questions, and I just want to thank you again for your time and for helping us through this.
Questions from the board?
Do you have any data that shows number of high school students statewide that might obtain their associates enroll in high school?
Well, currently, I think we had 9 graduate last year and 7 the year before, just from the Great Basin. I don't know about the other schools. That's another one, is we'd look at that. But one of the reasons we came up with the certificate instead of the associate's degree was because you have that exceptional student that can do the associate's degree. That's great, but a lot of them just want that start. Like my daughter, she doesn't want to go to all those classes. She wants to have fun. She wants the social interaction. She wants the sports. And a lot of times when you have to do those 2 years quickly, it's a lot of work, and they're still kids. So we are looking at guiding that pathway as well, and hopefully that will come. We had started some of these things, but then COVID hit, but we're going to keep going this year.
So Mary, you said you're kind of streamlining the process, and you differentiated between dual enrollment and dual credit. When can high school students in Elko County enroll for dual credit?
When they're a junior.
Okay.
There are some cases where you might have a sophomore do it, but that would take a lot. You'd have to go to the registrar, you'd have to make sure they're ready, that they have their acuplacer, but mainly it's a junior.
And can they still enroll for fall of 2020, or do they need to enroll for spring of 2021 if they are a junior? And
Spring of 21.
Okay.
The enrollment deadline is May 29th of every year.
You were mentioning that there'd be like 50% savings.
Mm-hmm.
So in the past, the schools or one of these grants have picked up the cost of the dual credit. Does the parent come up with the 50%, or, are we looking at the school district having to pick up that 50%?
What has happened in the past is the grant was based on 3 different tiers. So depending on need. So the grant in the first one usually covers the first tier. We had 179 students that had applied. And we try to cover them all, but it just depends on how much money we have at the time. Like this last summer, we were able to cover all students that enrolled during the summer with their textbooks as well. We've lost the grant, but we're looking at getting the others. So our tuition is 50% for that dual enrollment or dual credit student. And then usually the parent, I picked up the last 50% for mine. So it's usually the parent. There is no guarantee they'll get the grant. But so I'm still crossing my fingers. Our foundation will come through.
Do we have I didn't hear an exact number or a number that's close to how many kids do we have here in Elko County in the school district that are participating in the dual enrollment or dual credit?
Well, right now we have 969 students in dual credit across the state.
Okay.
I don't know how many are specific to Elko County. I have it on the computer. I can send it to you if you want it.
Okay.
But I know I had 179 that applied for the grant.
I'd be interested in seeing that. I think some of the other board members would be too, so.
And I sent the link to the dashboard that has a lot of that information as well. We provided all the superintendents' dashboards. We had a meeting with the president and we asked them what they needed, and they really liked the information we gave them with the dashboard because it helps them file a lot of their reports. And we have that information.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I did want to emphasize too, the beauty of the dual credit and dual enrollment versus AP is that that's guaranteed college credit that is, as you mentioned, is transferable within the state and even across state lines. Because I know our youngest son is probably a semester, 2 semesters early in graduation because of the dual enrollment courses. So it's a good bargain for parents and the district, I think.
I had my oldest took college courses, the second one took AP courses, and she didn't pass the test, so it didn't go across.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Well, I know I've had a lot of parents reach out to me saying, I know with COVID going on, everything's crazy, but what do you know about dual enrollment? So I invited a lot of parents to listen in on your presentation today, so you may be getting some more phone calls and emails from parents, and we really appreciate you coming and sharing the information with us, and we appreciate the partnership that we're building with Great Basin College and Elko County School District, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. If they have any questions, feel free to contact me.
All right,
Thank you.
All right, item 2.1 is receipt, review, and approval of the modification of the school reopening plan to reflect current restrictions as defined in the Nevada Governor's Directive 28 and subsequent directives. Dr. Robinson.
Okay, so I think I have it up there. I'm just,
There is gonna be feedback. Okay, I'll sit back. Okay. All right, I'll use my teacher voice. How's that? So I just have a few slides to share, and at the last board meeting, we went over the plans, the models that made up the plan that we were directed to create. And while we were giving that presentation, literally in the midst of that presentation, the governor signed an emergency directive 028, which provided for some changes in some modifications in the plan that was developed and approved by the board. So we wanted to make sure that the board was aware of them, and that we need to make sure that they are approved, the modifications, and then we'll have to submit them again to the Department of Education. So I have on this first slide, and again, I took the language directly from Directive 28. All right, so the first thing that in the directive, I think that we need to be reminded is that we are constantly monitoring what's happening with COVID in our county, and that is what's driving the metrics that the governor has identified and the work that we do. And the question was, if the governor says that we have the ability to plan, why are we following the mandates? And it's a great question. The way the governor presents it, it sounds as if the communities then can make those decisions outside of the mandates. But what is not said is that there are the mandates that are put into place, and then we can, in the framework of those mandates, create models and our plan that fits what we're hearing from the community. But it's still in the framework of the requirements that are in the mandates. So we still have to follow those. But the flexibility is in how we make that happen. What we make, for instance, the hybrid model look like in Elko County School District. But we still have to follow the framework and the model of a hybrid as one of the models that we have. So that's the reason that we still need to follow them.
Could you explain a little more why? I mean, I understand that we have to, but why?
Why we have to follow the mandates?
Yeah, like what are the repercussions if we didn't?
Oh, the district doesn't have a choice, is what I wanted to tell you. First of all, we don't have a choice. We are a heavily mandated industry. There are regulations that govern so many of the things that we do. We're working with children, and there are a plethora of mandates. We have to follow the governor's mandates, and we have to follow the regulations that are in place. As far as what consequences might be in place, I have to tell you, I don't know if they've been identified. And I think they have been, but I can't tell you, I can't tell you what they are exactly for the state of Nevada, but I do know that we have to follow them. So anyway, that's the first step here, is that, we're constantly monitoring what's happening in the county, what the needs of the county are, and there may be more modifications that come up that we have to continue to, requirements that come up that we have to continue, for which we have to monitor and modify. So I wanted to point that out. So there were many pieces of Directive 28, and one of them was on social distancing. And what they've done is taken recommendations from the American Association of Pediatricians, and I want you to know, input from the many associations that have said to the governor's health task force, can we take a look at these recommendations from the pediatricians and some other recommendations that are part of these modifications. So they are hearing us. They are hearing when organizations and citizens make themselves known to the governor, to the task force. So I just want to mention that. But what they've done is at the preschool, elementary, and middle school level, they have taken the 6-foot physical distancing requirement and reduced it to 3 feet, just at those grade levels, at those age levels. For the high school students and for all staff, regardless of what level they are working at, it is still 6 feet, 6-foot distance. And another thing that we think is helpful is that for all ages, regardless of the age, on the buses, we can go with a 3-foot physical distancing. We were looking at having to potentially ask for a variance because 6 feet distance, 6-foot distance is not going to accommodate us because we have a large ridership. And so that was a variance that we were considering looking at. This is actually going to help with a challenge that we saw for us. So that was in the physical distancing. And the ones that I'm pointing out tonight are the ones that we've made modifications in the plans. There were other recommendations or requirements that were put in. The other one is the face coverings. And now what face coverings, there was in Directive 024, the requirement of face coverings with the exception of ages 0 through 9. Now this new directive is requiring that all students at kindergarten through 12, it's not including preschool, kindergarten through 12 must wear the face masks, the face coverings. And then there's a piece in there that I just want to make the community aware about this, is that the parents and volunteers and guests who are unable or unwilling to wear face coverings are not to be permitted into the school buildings. Now I want to go back and say that they also listed exemptions to wearing the face coverings. So there are exemptions that are listed in that, and they require medical documentation. There's still the requirement from the district side that if there is that medical documented exemption, that students and staff would wear face shields. And so I just included in here language from the, language from the, it is that confusing the way it was all jumbled, but language from the plan directly where we've made those changes. So I wanted the board to be able to see the changes and for the community to see that we've added down at the bottom, in accordance with emergency directive requirements, the language about the face coverings and about any physical distancing. And we've included any future restrictions or mandates that the governor may make, and that it would allow us to then be able to make that modification. Of course, we would communicate to the board and to the community if there are further modifications down the line. And then under the in-person learning model, we also added the changes in there, and I wanted to show the community. That plan is going to, once the board approves the modifications, it will be reposted, the new modified plan will be posted to the website and available.
Dr. Robinson, what are the requirements when kids are outdoors or, like say for recess or whatever, as far as face coverings and social distancing? Is that covered in the plan?
There's nothing that has been distinctly written about when students are outdoors and they're playing. We've got to be able to maintain the physical distancing. We know that the CDC speaks of there's more latitude when we're outside. And so, and there has not been anything that has, and let me back up, the NIAA has also said, I believe that there's, and Chris, you can kind of help me with this, that they're able to participate in what the out-of-season activities, and they don't necessarily have to wear a face covering?
At this point, that's correct. For the secondary schools, all off-season conditioning protocols are in place as long as social distancing is being followed, and if it's indoor, then the 50% or 50% mandates are still in effect. Outdoor, so to give you an example, for off-season football practice, they've been encouraged only to participate in what are called 7-on-7 drills, where there's none of the big guys up front and just the little fast guys are all spread out in the field, so it's all properly socially distanced. Volleyball pre-season that went on until they stopped doing that. Again, you're well aware of how a volleyball court is spread out, so things like that are done. All athletic equipment, balls, whatever equipment they're using have to be washed down in between cohorts. So even if you have one group of 6 girls bump into each other before the other 6 girls can even touch that ball, it's got to be wiped down and cleaned. So, there are pretty severe restrictions, particularly when you try to implement that at the elementary level at a grade school. It's going to be tough, but there is a pathway to do that following the NIA guidelines.
Because that was going to be my next question, are there going to be cohorts of students for recess at an elementary and middle school level? Is that how that's going to be handled?
Well, at the middle school level, again, there's no recesses if we're talking about junior high schools and stuff like that, so it's mostly passing periods. That's one of the plans we're working on at the elementary level, is what is recess going to look like? Do we have to wipe down the playground equipment after every single recess? It's in process. I can let Mr. Walls dive on that one.
Generally speaking, I'm meeting with elementary principals again this week, but that's where we're trying to get to, is what does the plan look like to have recess in cohort groups? Not, let's not have recess because we can't figure it out.
Yeah.
How do we figure out how to have recess and provide that opportunity to kids, and provide that without it being so cumbersome that it can't be done? But yeah, we'll be able to figure it out.
Other questions from board, Mrs. Weiss?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. First, before the new directive came out, we were planning on a 50-50 scenario for the elementary students based on 6-foot social distancing, correct? So now that it's the 3-foot social distancing, how is that going to work? Because I'm guessing with the smaller distancing, then you can have more students in school. Is that correct?
That is the intent, I believe, and so part of the directive is to include the ability to apply for a variance. And one of the places that in which you can apply for that variance is in that 50% capacity. So that's what we're exploring. That's what I mentioned earlier, that we're exploring our ability to be able to apply and be approved for the idea that we would be able to bring in more students and go beyond, get a variance on that capacity. It is based on how educationally sound, and I don't think we would have a problem making an argument for that, but also transmissions rates and what's happening in the county overall. And those would be the two criteria that would be looked at before the state health department would approve it.
Okay, but I think my question is how would that manifest itself? Because right now you're having 50% of the students go, 2 or 3 days a week or whatever, and then the opposite. So now if you have more capacity, are you gonna, how are you gonna split that up?
The room, the mandate that the room still be 50% capacity, or 50 people, whatever is less, hasn't changed. That hasn't changed. So we can still only put 50% of the students in the classroom. There's less space between them now by this directive, but there's nothing that has lifted the 50% capacity. We do have a mechanism by which we can explore a variance and expand that the capacity to a greater percentage. But that's what we have to, what we would have to apply.
Okay, my other question, and statement, from what I understand, the reopening committee is still recommending the ABA schedule. And I'm really disappointed in that, actually, because we heard for hours on end at the last meeting about how hard it was going to be for not only parents but also teachers to make that alternating schedule every other week, find childcare for kids on Tuesday, Thursday one week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday the next week. I understand the reopening committee's point that they get one extra day of actual contact in school, but at this point, as hard as this is going to be to implement and carry out, I think you're just making it so much harder by having this confusing alternating schedule.
Yep.
And I think that most parents would much prefer their kids to go the same days every week so that there's consistency, there's no confusion, and they can have a better ability to find daycare for their children. And I would really strongly suggest that the reopening committee relook at that again and tweak that, because I just don't think that the schedule we have right now is going to work well for very many people. And they probably will end up having to take their children out of school because they won't be able to accommodate the daycare situation and the constant flux.
And I would echo with Candace that I've had a lot of parents talk to me about that as well. And I know the contact time is important, but again, when you have parents reaching out to you constantly saying, please just put our kids, we want our kids in school, please put them the same days every week. I would agree that that's something I hear a lot of parents asking.
Yeah. I hear just the opposite. Many parents and teachers have said otherwise, that, the minors have those weird schedules. They do a great job with accommodating their schedules as far as the flux that occurs within the month, and can handle that. I think the summer is a good example too of what parents do with childcare as far as not being in school and being able to accommodate those situations in their work schedules.
Absolutely, and then we definitely have people on every part of every opinion on this.
Right.
And it looks like we have a couple questions. So if you've got a question, please, I'll point to you if I don't know your name. I apologize. I recognize you, I think, but in your mask, I'm not positive. And just stand up, state your name loudly so we can have that for the record, and then go ahead with your questions, please.
I'm Richard George. I'm also a single parent. I work flexible schedules at the mines. It is very hard to have the rotating kids when they're going to go to the babysitter, because the babysitters set up their schedule. They know when kids are coming. When you start flip-flopping it like that, it makes it to where they don't want to take the kids. So for me, it'd be much easier if my kids were the same time, they knew when it was coming, plus it gives the teacher one extra day to do her work, or his work, in my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. George. All right, that's some others.
Yeah, I'm Caroline Hicks again. Just from a substitutes perspective, if we weren't doing the ABA thing, it might be easier to get more substitutes in, because then they're gonna, like for me, you know, I need to be home with my kid on the days I'm not gonna sub. And so if I'm always gonna be home Monday, Tuesday, then all the other days of the week, I can be looking for those days to sub on, rather than having to know, okay, wait, I can't this, and it's just going to be harder to track. And so you might be able to get more subs that way. I'm really concerned for the teachers with the amount of subs, because the teachers are going to be there every day, but the subs are going to have to be home with their kids, the ones that have kids, every other day. And so just something else to think about.
I'm Janae Riley. My question is, if we did the AABB schedule, wouldn't it allow the teachers that extra day to be more available to the students who are at home doing the online learning, since they're going to be teaching every day of the week? If they had that extra day, then we would have more access to the teachers, and they could answer the questions for the students.
Good question. Thank you, Janae.
And the schools that, like Wells, it's on a 4-day week, are they staying on a 4-day week and going AB?
Following up with what Ira's asking right there, you know, it seems like a possibility would be that everybody goes to a 4-day week, and that would take out the inconsistencies of needing a child care Monday, Wednesday, Friday this week, Tuesday, Thursday. And as Ms. Hicks was stating right there, for a substitute, figuring, okay, we're going to be down the road 5 weeks, so you're sitting there doing a math problem to figure out if you're going to be available or not. I agree with the viewpoint that the consistency twice, you know, the AB or AABB, that Friday. I think one of the saving graces that we may have with this is the opportunity to do cleaning and getting the rooms cleaned out good on that Friday. I don't know that it totally solves the concern that a teacher is presenting a lesson to the A group right here. Tomorrow he or she is teaching to the B group in person, but doing something online for the other. It doesn't take that dynamic out of the equation, I don't think. But following up with some of the additions that we were looking at with regards to wearing masks, the question that I've had, and I guess I haven't asked it to this particular point, if you have a mask on, does that change anything, or could we ask if there is a way that if we socially distance people, that the need for a mask diminishes? And, you know, as it says right now, it's both. And I don't know if there may be an opportunity to go through and at least eliminate one of those, whether it's a mask, because of the flexibility. And I understand with 50% and 3-foot social distancing that we may have some room for a variance. I don't know.
Yeah, and as I said, I don't know the answer to that. I know that the directive has lessened the physical distancing, but made a greater requirement for face coverings. And all we can do, and then is not entirely clear on the items by which you can get a variance. So all I can do is explore it, and I'd be happy to do that and see what that means for the district.
one other thing to follow up with what Ms. Hicks was also saying, she was asking for a 4-week or a 6-week. I think that we need to be looking at where we're at, basically on a week-by-week basis, not letting this drag on for forever. If we get our metrics and we fall in, and if the governor changes his mind again, you know, we've got to be able to react and move back towards our ideal learning environment, which is everybody back as we've been for years. And I think that should be the objective that this board has, is looking to how we can get back at the safest time and as quick as we possibly can, so we don't continue to disrupt the education of all these kids. We're messing with an entire generation, and you know, we've been in it for 5 months now, and who knows how much longer it's going to be. But I think we need to look at this a lot sooner and shorter increments of time. So
I like the staggered schedule as we have it, just because we've heard from daycare people or people that need daycare that they're going to incur an extra day. In fact, they're essentially going to incur more costs because of in a 4-day week versus the plan where kids are 5 days there. I just think the 5-day situation is a compromise for those parents who want us all the way back into the classroom. And it's one that follows the directives and the phase mandates that we were under. Plus, that's a pretty all-star committee that we had gathered of administrators and teachers and parents, and I think they did an incredible job putting that together with the best interests of kids in mind.
Okay, go ahead, we got another question, Bailey?
Yeah, I'm Bailey Meza. I just had actually a question text to me, if I could ask. Has it been considered to do half days like Winnemucca is doing? Like in the morning, like A group goes in the morning, B group goes in the evening, or how that works. I'm not completely sure on how Winnemucca is doing it, but that way they can still do the 50%.
Okay, has that been considered?
So I can answer that. Again, that was one of the things that was floated within our committee. One of the issues with that is based on the Elko County School District students' huge reliance on busing. We do not have the buses to transport that many kids throughout the course of a day. We'd have to almost double our busing fleet and our drivers. Also, that accounts for a more than 50% reduction in student contact time throughout the course of a semester or 9 weeks or a school year. A 4-day week accounts for a 20% cut in contact time if you go to a 4-day, but an AB, half of their school year is gone. And when we broached that with both the parents and the teachers and the administrators of the reopening committee, that was outright rejected because that was not in the best interest of the students of the Elko County School District. Maybe it is for Humboldt, but not for Elko.
Other questions?
Could you guys talk about any equal access or potential problems with equal access to education for students, and what legalities might be involved in that?
In which one?
In any of them, actually. That parents might not be able to have equal access to an education, essentially.
Absolutely. All of the models, one of the main things we looked at, obviously, is equality of access for all students, both at-risk students, your general reg ed students, and your special education students, and which one provided the most access. The rotating 5-day, again, depending on special education status, some of those kids may be attending school all 5 days. And the idea is that even in the off days, you know, that's a horrible phrasing, and we have to try to stop using the phrase off days. There are no off days. Students are attending educational practices 5 days a week or 4 days a week if they're in a 4-day school, as you know, Trustee Wines mentioned a little while ago. So attending school in that model, one of the feelings of the reopening committee was that that provided the most access, the most closely resembling a return to school as normal, as the board asked the reopening committee to focus on, that we could provide. All of the parents on the committee, again, the childcare issue was brought up repeatedly, and there are several members of the committee in the room tonight. And we had parents from 3 different communities in Elko County, and they had actually asked us not to change it because they had already arranged for childcare, following the model that we had in place. So, you know, again, every individual is different, and I don't want to say that just because they said that they had already arranged it, that other people cannot. One of the things, again, that may be out there is the communities will come together and figure out a way to cover this. Again, as Member Zeisler said, in the summers, people need 100% daycare coverage with their kids home. So, again, all of these things were absolutely discussed. And within the committee, the plan that was put forward originally, when we reviewed it the second time, again, passed unanimously twice out of that, the reopening committee, in particular, Mr. Smith's portion of it, of the academic committee, where that hybrid model was originally put forward.
And also add the technology, that, you know, the Chromebooks and the hotspots and things like that, when you're asking about access, you know, that's something we've worked really hard on to try to make sure that we're giving those families that don't have those devices or that access.
And Chris, for the at-home days, minimally, a teacher could have students working on assignments. I know there's discussion about flipped classroom concepts and all of that, so there's a spectrum of different things that can be done at those at-home that wouldn't require, I know one of the comments made was about incurring extra work for teachers, but I think a smart teacher can mitigate some of that.
Yeah, I believe they can. There may be some extra work.
You know, I guess to be perfectly blunt, I would say it is going to be more work for teachers.
They're preparing.
We can't hide behind the fact that it won't be. It will be more work for teachers. But the hybrid model, we are accounting for instruction being, we're looking at it as 10 days of instruction over 2 weeks. The difference is that 5 of those days are in person, 5 of those days are through distance learning, but there will be instruction delivered all 5 days. And yep, teachers will have to prepare for what that instruction looks like through distance learning. But the plan with the hybrid plan isn't that the kids only receive instruction on the day that they're in person. The kids receive instruction and that's the training professional development that we're working on and providing for teachers is how do you structure with that idea in mind, that over a 2-week period there are 10 days of instruction.
And that goes hand in hand with what Mr. Smith just mentioned about getting those Chromebooks and those hotspots and those needed materials out to the kids to provide equity of access.
Ms. Hicks and then Mr. Fish.
I think there's just still some confusion. Maybe I might be the only one, but it's going to be different for elementary and then secondary education, obviously. But for elementary school, I don't understand how a teacher is supposed to teach their elementary school class and also be teaching at the same time another group at home. Like
that isn't the model that we're talking about. The model we're talking about is teachers preparing for that distance instruction to happen. It isn't meant to be 100% synchronous instruction. Where there's a camera on the teacher, for example.
And that you're not implying that in secondary, high school, middle school either then?
Right, no.
Okay.
No, again, teachers, again, under the model and professional development model that we're developing, it's not a teacher teaching 5 days live and then 50% of zooming in, you know, and watching that live. First of all, there's no infrastructure for the internet in Elko County that can support 10,000 kids doing live instruction, live streaming. So that's not what the model is. We didn't want to create a learning model that from the very beginning we knew was impossible due to the logistic limitations of agencies outside of the control of the school district.
For sure. So essentially it's going to be homework instruction. I mean, this is the confusion. How is it that the teachers are actually teaching 10 days a week? That's where it's confusing.
And what if the distance portion really, is that instruction is planned and prepared so that the kids can access it through distance learning. And you know, when you talk about, you know, the live feed or whatever we want to call it, we aren't saying that that would never happen. And now I'm losing the names of some of those programs, but I'm thinking of being a teacher's classroom when, in fact, a lot of times they have kids use their phones because they have apps where the kids can tap in an answer and things like that. Absolutely, there's going to be opportunities for where a teacher may set up, you know what, tomorrow when I have the B kids here, all of you A kids who are able to log in at 1:15, we're going to do this, that game, that instructional activity. There'll be opportunities for that, but that is not the main mode of instruction.
A quick example, just from an elementary standpoint, would be something like a menu list of activities that relate to the learning that took place, you know, while you're in person. So that, you know, a kid at home would be looking at a choice menu of, you know, 6 different options that a teacher has prepared ahead of time that all correlate to the learning that's taking place. So those kids are engaged in meaningful activities related to that, but the teacher has compiled a list ahead of time so that, again, they're not having to, you know, log in and say to this kid, to each kid, this is something that we're doing now, but through these platforms that Mr. Walls has talked about, there's going to be potentially some choice menus. That's just one example. That
Great, thank you.
Might be somewhat simplistic to wrap your mind around.
Yeah, thank you.
And so, Ray, I mean, the word instruction, I think some people have this image that a teacher has to be up in front of students. So what you're giving us a visual for is something that, I mean, is instructional, but it's something students may be doing independently while you're doing the rest of the work with the students.
I think different content areas, different grade levels, different things lend themselves to different models, and so I think the real key is having a toolbox for our instructors that they can pull from of what is the most appropriate for that given, you know, set of 10 days, like Mr. Walls mentioned.
And that flipped classroom maybe work well for some instructional areas that don't work well for others. You know, some of the CTE classes where obviously you can't weld at home, but you can do a lot of the preparation work and the reading and understanding what, you know, the heat level needs to be on your arc welder and doing some of that work. And then when you actually go into school, now you're welding, right? So the flipped classroom in that sense makes a lot of sense. In others, it would not. Again, I think Mr. Smith hit it dead on right. It's a toolbox. And we're trying to provide our teachers with the most tools that they can take and in their professional capacity, determine what's going to work best for them, for their students in their grade level, right? And not limit our professionals saying, you can only do this. And I think you hit it right. The old model of the sage on the stage, where a teacher standing in front of a classroom in perfect rows with the kids silently taking notes and writing down everything the teacher says, that's not what education looks like anymore, right? It's not how kids learn anymore. So this actually lends itself very, very well to that interactive ability, particularly in the choice menus. And it should work very, very well, hopefully. That's what the PD is for, so.
And another,
Go ahead, Ms. Janae, you want to go ahead and hold your question, Mr. Zeisler?
Okay, with the platforms that you're planning to use, are all the teachers going to be using the same platform, or is it going to be like in the spring where it was like, hi, we have 50 different platforms the parents have to figure out? One.
There's Google Classroom, there's Canvas, which are the 2 primary platforms. Canvas lends itself much more to a secondary level, whereas Google Classroom works effectively K-12. So a secondary student may have to go from Canvas to Google Classroom depending on the class. An elementary student would be in one.
Okay, and are you going to require all the teachers to use a platform? Because in the past we had teachers just doing email, which was a joke. So
I'm sorry, I didn't mean it.
No, like I just, I mean, I know you guys have said it's not going to be like it was in the spring and all of that, but I have 4 kids in 4 different age groups, and I can't have 5,000 different things, and I want the teachers to be accountable, whereas some teachers weren't there for their students. How is that going to work with the online platforms? We're going to have the same platforms, but are the teachers gonna be held accountable if they're not active in their students' learning?
Absolutely. Again, they'd be held accountable the exact same way if their students weren't learning if teaching was live. That's through the observation and the NEPF protocols put forward by the state of Nevada for teacher observation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have one more question here, and we got more from the board. Please say your name.
Hi, I'm Kelsey McCullough. I have a preschool kiddo who receives special services. I was curious, one, how preschool is kind of going to look this year, because I haven't gotten anything yet. And two, for those kids who receive those special services, how will that look with this AB kind of schedule? Because I know our speech therapist at Liberty Peak was only there 2 days a week last year. And she was also, I think she was in Wells and Battle Mountain. And maybe not Battle Mountain, but somewhere else. And she was already like super overloaded there. So I was just curious how IEPs will be handled with that kind of a schedule.
So the preschools are going to follow the essentially the same as the 4-day schools because it's a 4-day program. Right. So alternating attendance. And then, you know, the I in IEP stands for Individualized Education Plan. So the message and the directives that we've been given to site principals now is we're looking at all those on an individual case basis. You know, obviously a preschool setting is a lot different than an elementary setting, which is different than a secondary setting. So, you know, it's difficult to give a blanket answer, but we're recognizing that, yeah, those services are going to, you know, maybe going to look a little bit different, but how do we, you know, make sure that, like, for example, your therapist that's only, you know, at that school a few days, how can we make sure that we're setting schedules up so that the kids who need those services are receiving them when that provider is there? So lots of logistics to kind of tease through, and, you know, you mentioned Liberty Peak. Liberty Peak's going to have one potential solution to that problem, but, you know, 5 miles down the road is Sage, who's going to have a totally different logistical way to facilitate that. So, you know, like I said, I've had meetings with all the site principals over the last week, and the directive is to, you know, kind of start looking at those individual plans and meeting with the IEP teams and figuring out what services are most appropriate for each kid, because there is, of course, a wide range there.
There's just a group of us that we felt really forgotten about when COVID hit, and we understood, you know, like, this was not, nobody planned for this to happen. There wasn't a set thing in place, but we felt like, one, our kids, because of their age, were just like, oh, they're just preschool. Like, it doesn't matter, they're just preschool, and we couldn't get people to call us back. We couldn't get emails back. Like, and so we just want to make sure that our kids are going to actually get what they need without having to try to figure it out. Because, I mean, the closest speech therapist outside of Elko, we have to drive 4 hours to Reno, which, if that's what I have to do, it's what I have to do. But I need to know that's what I have to do.
Well, it's definitely going to be our plan for you to not feel that same way moving forward here.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's got a comment and a question. A comment from the young lady in the back about the Canvas use in a single platform. I had some comments this summer that actually some of the teachers taking our courses at GBC, their courses that they were doing in the classroom actually populated all in one place. And so students taking dual credit or taking coursework here will have it all appear in one place. So that'll make things easier. My question was, I know Jim had mentioned the masks, and we've had presentations on the masks. I was wondering, Keith, how it went this summer as far as ESY was concerned and mask usage with the littles that were there.
Probably the best indicator is I didn't have a single complaint about using them, and I visited, I think, almost every week. I was out at the programs while they were running, and every adult I saw was wearing a mask. Honestly, the first day as kids arrived, parents just assumed their kids needed to wear masks, and there were 5-year-olds walking in with masks on, and they were just fine with it.
And 3-year-olds.
And 3-year-olds.
And 3-year-olds.
You know, each time I went out to the schools, and we have some more ESY teachers here, they spent a lot more time with the kids than I did, but each time I was in the schools, I went into every classroom, that ESY was happening in. And there were kids, it was not mandatory for kids this summer, some of these directives hadn't come out, but there were kids with masks on in every classroom, every adult had masks on. I saw kids interacting with teachers, with both of them having masks on and both of them being able to get to understand what the other was saying, able to instruct. But from what I observed, it was a normal classroom setting. I put my mask on and I went and messed with kids and things were good. And instruction was taking place and I didn't have a single concern from any teachers that impeded their instruction.
So then I guess I would move to approve the changes based on the directives.
I still have a
Well,
question.
we can still ask
We have a
questions.
motion, we have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, I know we have more discussion, so, more discussion. I know Mr. Cooney has had several messages come in.
A question I've gotten, and it really addresses the 800-pound gorilla that's in the room, and we really haven't had an opportunity to discuss this. During that last special session of the legislature, the school districts were carved out of a bill with regards to the liability insurance that a school district would have in the event a COVID outbreak takes place and the school district would be financially responsible for that. And school districts, and there were a couple other entities, were taken out of governmental entities. Okay? My question is, have we heard anything from our pool pack? Because, and like the accounts payable, we're paying an insurance premium this month for that. Has the insurance company said that yes, we do have coverage, or no, you may be hanging out there? Have we had any definitive information from basically our insurance carrier?
We, as a matter of fact, just heard from our insurance carrier today, and they indicated that there is no coverage for transmission of communicable diseases.
So we're hanging out there.
Okay. Mr. Cooney? All right, Bailey, go ahead.
So it's my understanding that COVID or not, viruses are not covered under insurance either way, correct? So it doesn't
Right.
really
The
apply.
communicable diseases, we got the word today, that is not included.
Okay, yeah.
But the legislative bill that passed provided coverage to the governmental agencies that were listed that hadn't been carved out. So we've got Carson City doing work again for us that should be a decision made in our local county.
And Jim, are you worried then about litigation as far as the school district?
Obviously,
then?
yes,
I mean,
that's
as far
exactly.
as far as like, let's say hypothetically, a teacher comes down with
Exactly.
it, right?
Yeah, and
And I would-
a student gets COVID or is exposed to it, takes it home to grandma, that sort of thing. You start to get into the legal stuff with this, and it just becomes that 800-pound gorilla, so.
And my assumption would be, as long as we're following any directive or mandate from the state, that liability is reduced then.
I'm not
Unlike
sure
Washoe
about that.
County.
I think we're hanging out there as a lone entity right now.
It does make, and the pool pack did indicate that it, of course, we're going to follow to the letter the CDC guidelines and the mandates that our governor has identified for us. And this development makes that even more important, that we do that.
I'm just having a really hard time wrapping my head around how the teachers are going to teach 5 days every week and still have time to prepare the online material. I'm just baffled as to how they can get that done.
Gretchen does it?
I think too, a lot of teachers have their own children, and I don't expect school to be daycare, but as I'm teaching 5 days a week, my evenings and weekends is going to be making sure following through my own children are getting done what needed to be done on those off days, as well as other teachers' children. So I even have less of me to give as a teacher. I spend a lot of evenings and weekends at the school already doing prep, but now there's even less of me to give to that. And so it comes down to then I start having to make choices, my own children or the children that I deeply care about in the classroom, but there's only one of me. Just something to consider.
So if we went to a AABB schedule and you had an extra day in there, whether it be Wednesday or Friday, I mean, to me, that makes more sense because it's gonna help the teachers have that extra day.
I agree.
Teresa, do you want to address that, or would you like me to address that? So as the union president, you can't do that to the 4-day school weeks, but do that to the 5-day school weeks, because that is considered an unfair labor practice. So it's beautiful if we were still a 5-day-a-week district, but we are not a 5-day-a-week district. And I don't want to file a lawsuit against all of you. He's sitting right there. I don't want to file a grievance against all of you. He's sitting right there. I happen to be married to that man that's sitting over there. I like all these people that I work with. I don't want to be forced to file a grievance, but you cannot have a 4-day school week be told, teach kids 4 days a week and then figure it out. And then 5-day people, oh, you get an extra day to plan online. And we are now a school district that has 4-day and 5-day. So somehow we have to be creative, whether it be a 4-day or a 5-day. We have to be creative to give teachers, I'm one of them, the time to do all of our online things so Gretchen doesn't have to choose between her own children and her children in her classroom. And we've had those conversations. Dr. Robinson and I have had those conversations. Mr. Smith and I have had those conversations. I don't want to file a grievance, but it would become an unfair labor practice. So we have to be very, very careful when we say that this is our ultimate solution, because it's not.
So Mrs. Zeisler, as the union president, what is your recommendation? I know you sit on the reopening committee, and you're saying, you know, you're looking at that could be unfair labor practices. What is your recommendation from your perspective?
So for the safety and education of children, I'm absolutely in favor of the alternating schedule, okay? We see kids more. We're not asking parents to put more of their time into an extra day of childcare. We heard that at the last meeting. We all need to be terminated and they need their tax money back to provide childcare. I understand that. I understand their frustration very, very, very much. I'm a mom. I get it. So let's have our kids in school more often than not, so there is less childcare. We've talked about solutions as teachers would get an additional, there'd be additional time in their contract day. In their regular contract day, there would be additional time to take care of some of that online stuff. We haven't come to a conclusion yet, but we've been meeting weekly to come to that type of conclusion, so that the 4-day teachers are getting the same amount of time to do online that the 5-day teachers would get. That could be something, I'm just throwing this out there because we all know things change every day. So I don't want to say something and then be like, she said it, it's stone, because it's not. It's not written in stone today. Maybe we dismiss kids 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes early, and we have some additional time at the end of the day. I can respond to children that were at home immediately that way. They're not waiting for me till Friday if they had a question on Monday. They're not waiting for me to respond to them, or say Wednesday, right? They have a question, but I don't see them Thursday, and then I don't get back to them till Friday. I feel that's a disservice to kids. It's a disservice to parents. They're trying to figure out what they need to do to help their little person, but, oh, Mrs. Leiser's checked out, her contract day is over, which we don't do that, but ultimately, that could be what it's perceived as. So we've talked about some of those things. What does a day look like now in the life of a teacher to be able to do both of those things? But we have to be careful that it's fair across the board. And if we were a 5-day-a-week school district, done, easy, could be handled very easily that way, but we're not anymore. We have lots of 4-day schools now, so we have to be careful of that. Because I don't want to file a lawsuit, I don't want to file a grievance, I don't want to do any of those things.
But the 5 days teachers would still be in school 5 days a week. They would
Right.
just have that extra.
But when are you gonna give the 4-day people the extra
Well, I
time?
think because they're in school longer during the day. I mean, ours, actually, the 4-day school week, kids and teachers are in school longer than the 5-day school week.
Right, but
So,
teachers.
so
go-
because of the longer day, they could be given time during those longer days to be able to prepare for their online. I mean,
It
you
just
know-
has to be worked out. That's all I'm
Oh,
saying,
true.
is we just have to make sure that it's fair across the board. So everybody
Yes,
has to be
and I'm-
given
and I
the
agree.
equal amount of time.
Yes.
And you should know that, because you're gonna hear from your friends in Wells about it. And they should raise the stake, the people on the 4-day week, if these kinds of things happen and it's not fair and equal. So we just have to make sure that we look at those things instead of just saying, oh, this is easy. No, there's other things we have to look at. It's not, one question gets answered and we have 5 more. So, I mean, we're in a difficult situation, and I don't want to be negative. I'm trying to tell everybody to keep their positive faces on. You can't see my smile. We have to be positive for kids. It's about them. We have to be positive for them.
And I think you just hit it right on the head, is there's one question answered and there are 5 more or a dozen more. And I know everyone in here, whether you're watching, via YouTube or whether you're here in this room, I know that's happening constantly. As you hear one answer, you're thinking, but what about this and what about this and what about this? And, Mr. Cooney said it earlier, we want to be able to get back to having kids in the classroom as quickly as possible. And as we follow these directives and keep our kids safe, keep our teachers and our staff safe, we hope to be able to move back to that as quickly as possible. If that means in a month, that would be amazing. If that means it's going to take a couple months, we're just going to plug along together and make things happen. And I think, working out all these details and just kind of rolling along with the changes we're going to have to remain flexible at the moment in order to do what's best for our kids. And I think most parents, most students understand that that flexibility is going to have to be there for a little while so we can figure things out, make things work for everybody as well as we can, knowing that our ultimate goal is to get back to being in school all the time with no restrictions and just moving on. But right now, we know and understand we have to follow the directives because we're a public school. And I think that's, in order to let our kids be in school, who want to be in school, that's what we're going to have to do. So, any other questions or comments from the board or anyone here present or anyone that's online?
I've got some online things, but put them into the public comment.
Okay.
At the end.
There's been some more public comments inputted too.
Okay.
All right, I did have a couple of questions come in. One of the questions was parents who are not home during the day, are they going to be able to work with their students in the evening if they don't have someone there, or are they going to be required to be, like you said, if the teacher says, hey, I'm going to do this at 9 o'clock, that's when I have class. If that student is at daycare or somewhere else where that's not available, can they do those in the evening?
So like that example was just an activity, and any student could be exempted from that activity. They wouldn't be required to be in attendance at 9 a.m. on Tuesday morning. And that's the intent of the distance learning portion being instruction that's planned ahead and prepared for the kids.
And I know we've got great teachers that are working on making our distance education amazing. So, way to go, teachers. And parents, I know you're going to be working with your kids and with the teachers, and everybody's going to be doing their best to make this happen. Mr. George?
The only thing I can say is that last quarter of last year was, like she said, a joke.
Yeah,
And
that
I
one
hope
was
it's better than that was, because that was, my children just quit learning.
well, and I think everyone in this room would agree we could call that emergency learning. That was just emergency in general. And I know as a district, I know our teachers are working on making distance education look very, very different and look like, hey, I'm learning something every day. I have opportunities to learn every day. And it's going to look very different from the spring. From everything I have heard and everything I see, it's going to look very different. But absolutely, I know a lot of people have that concern. But
Our district was caught flat-footed when they were for the jump ball, and we were just stand in this country. Nobody was ready for this.
All right.
Not my choice, though.
No.
No.
All right,
So
any
there's
other-
a motion on.
Yes, there's, any other questions? We do have a motion on the floor. Okay, all in favor of approving the modifications to the plan, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay?
Nay.
All right. Chair votes aye, and the modifications are approved, knowing that there may be more modifications, quite possibly before our next board meeting.
Quite possibly before we're done.
Yes, yeah, so just everyone keeping in mind that we all have the same goal, getting back in the classroom, regular, normal, no restrictions. But right now, we're following the directives and doing what we can to keep everyone safe and following the safe health practices that we've been given. So just be ready. I think that's how we can finish that one off. All right, item 3.1 is our consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and the consent agenda is approved. Item 4.1 is a report from our NASB director.
I forwarded an email to you that NASB wrote a letter in opposition to SB4, to no avail. And there is a COVID update. I just saw the email a little bit ago, and I'll forward it on to you. COVID update in the state. And that's it.
Thank you. Item 4.2 is items from board members.
I just want to say before I forgot to make it a public comment that I am employed by TBC, so my comments to Mary were because I am, actually, she's my boss, so I had to make those comments. Just kidding, online people. By the way, I was telling Teresa when I learned of Keith's passing that Keith was a very important person in this community because him and his wife really gave. I used to be in charge of the youth ministry program at the Catholic Church, and they were very active in supporting our students and supporting the kids here in Elko County, outside of church as well. So he will be missed.
Yes, I just also would like to say that, Keith Fish was a very, very nice man, and he's really going to be missed on this board. He brought a lot to this board, a lot of experience, and we'll miss him.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I sat next to him for 3.5 years. He was, I respected everything he had to say. Everything he brought to the board was very valid.
They did have a very nice service for him at the Catholic Church today that was attended, and our prayers and our condolences go with Sue and the rest of the family. So may he rest in peace.
I can't hardly talk. I'm gonna miss Mr. Fish a lot. He was an asset to the board, and he was a good and kind man. And I'm just gonna miss you, Keith. Sorry, guys.
You're okay. When I called the board, because Mrs. Fish called me to let me know of Keith's passing, and I got to call each of the board members and Dr. Robinson and visit with each of them. And there are so many wonderful things about Keith that we could share. I will say I will miss his blunt humor. Really was very timely in our board meetings, and his dedication to students who were really non-traditional students. He really wanted to see every student succeed and do what worked for them to be successful in life. Even if it wasn't an A in the classroom, he wanted to see those students be successful people. And he will certainly be missed on our board. I know before too long, we will need to replace him. But I feel in honor of him and his memory, we don't need to discuss that yet tonight. We know that's down the road, but we certainly send our condolences to the Fish family and to everyone who had contact with Mr. Fish in all of the different things he was involved in and his support of kids throughout our county. So that being said, are there any other items from board members? We'll move on to 5.1, our superintendent's report.
Okay, I wanted to talk about our partnerships that we have in our community, and I've got to bring this up very quickly. We have very generous and very active partners in our community. And I'll just name a few. Last week, I met with representatives from the Western Shoshone Elko Band Council, and they expressed an interest in partnering with ECSD and providing resources for students in their community. So that's, we're very grateful for that. Komatsu Equipment Company is another valued partner, and they're extending support to ECSD as we also prepare for the 2021 school year. And again, we are very appreciative of that partner. And we know that the Nevada Gold Mines is a wonderful partner and are consistently extending their generosity to Elko County school community. We are now working on a number of initiatives that are designed to support the children in our county throughout our county. So I'll have more updates on that, but we just want to express our gratitude to our many community partners. I'm only naming a few. This is a community that rallies around and supports the children and families, and very appreciated. So I will name those. And I just want to mention to the board that your administrators and your staff are working furiously right now to prepare for the new school year. We appreciate how frustrating and disappointing this time is, and challenging for everyone, and we keep that in mind as we are continuing to find solutions to the countless details that we are completing and the many unknowns that we are still sorting through. There's situations and requirements and outcomes, and they continue to change from moment to moment, but know that your team is working continuously to find those solutions and to continue to identify what is best for kids given the situation that we find ourselves in. So we thank you for your support, we thank you for your flexibility, and we understand that.
Just a quick question. Do you have a goal of a date in mind when you're going to be able to lay out all the details for everyone?
We have several of those.
I'm sure it's as soon as possible is the goal, but is there a specific date that we could look forward to knowing, okay, they're going to tell us what this year's going to look like? Because I know there's a lot of parents at home that are trying to decide what they're going to do, and it was going to be based on this board meeting, and we're not really hearing all the details like we hoped we would.
Well, so I want to, there's so many details that we are working through, and many of them are, that will become things that the public needs to know so that you can make the plans. And, for instance, where in the A-B scheduling, whatever that may look like, what is it going to look like for your family? And so, as I mentioned in my letter, my communication to the community, that's going to come out very soon, very, very soon. We know that that's an important piece that everyone needs to have in their hands. The other pieces are the professional development, and that is what is underlying a lot of the discussion that we had tonight about how that's going to work for teachers. And we're working on getting that together. So that's information that will be presented to the teachers, and they'll be working that professional development. So we'll be able to answer those questions about what is that learning model going to look like when they get into the start of the school year.
Right. Well, and I'm talking about things like, what if somebody comes down with COVID in your classroom? What are the steps? What if someone in your family has it? What are the expectations? I'm not just talking about the teaching process and what to expect in the classroom. I'm talking about all of what does a day at school look like this year? Are we eating together? Are we recessing together? What's passing period like? just, I mean, as much detail as you can provide, or when is that gonna come?
Right, so that helps give me some idea about what you're
Sorry.
talking about. No, that's okay, I appreciate that. So we're talking about cleaning protocols. I think somebody asked, what are the guidelines for the state in closing if there's positive cases, and likely will be positive cases. And so we're waiting for final guidance from the State Department on what that looks like. They have designed the protocol for that, and they're fine tuning the last little pieces. As soon as that is released, we will release it to the community. We will put it on our website. We will make sure that the community knows what those guidelines are. We have procedures that we're creating and developing so that we'll have a procedural manual of sorts that we'll be able to provide to our school administrators so that they can then pass that on to the teachers so they know what the procedures will look like. Part of the training that we are required to provide for all school personnel is not only on the distance education portion of hybrid or the distance education model that we may find ourselves going into should there be positive cases, but also the health and safety component, prevention, and all those pieces. So that's something that's being developed so that we can provide it to the teachers so that they'll be fully trained on what those procedures look like in the classroom for them in the course of the day. Now, I'll get right to you. Some of those questions that you're asking about what will lunches look like, as somebody mentioned earlier, there are some every school is unique and every community is unique. So what lunch may look like at one elementary school may look different at another elementary school, and so on for the different secondary levels.
So those kind of details don't have to be approved by the state then?
Those do not have to be approved by the state. The structure of the models, the hybrid, those kinds of things, those had to be approved by the board and then to the state. These details, as long as we're following the mandates, they can be unique to the school.
Great. So it's just going to be as soon as you can get it to us, we're going to get the information.
The second we have
Okay.
it. Okay. And even if we only have a solid answer for a day, we'll still get it out and then tell you if it changes the next day.
Okay.
Dr. Rao, go ahead. Mr. George, go ahead.
So will there be a setup deal, say your kid does become positive, where they go on to a full online while they're quarantined?
Yes, and part of the directives that were in, part of the mandates that were in Directive 28 did speak to isolation and quarantine should there be a positive case. So yes, there is that expectation that the schools would then participate in that. And those are the specific guidelines that we're waiting to hear from the state, that what would trigger either a class, potential class quarantine, school being closed for 72 hours while we do cleaning. I mean, I think there are different levels that would trigger different reactions. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
And Dr. Robinson, I was just going to say, where can parents look to receive the updates? I think that would be helpful to announce publicly.
Sure. So I will continue to send out communications. When we have these documents, when they become available, you'll continue to hear from me. Anything that you hear from me, and I send the plans right to the community, anything that is then sent to the community is also posted on our website. If you go to the web page, the home page, the top right hand side, you'll see COVID-19, and in there is anything that's been posted is available there. Also on the front page are district announcements, and when we post and send out communications, you'll be able to find them there as well too.
And Dr. Robinson, if a phone call or a text, a district-wide phone call or a district-wide text goes out and parents are not receiving that, what do they need to do to change that?
So we're discovering that that's happening, and I would recommend first that parents go into the portal and check your settings, because we have for all parents your email address, and then you choose if you want text messages and the different ways that you want communications. And for those parents that are not receiving the emails, that have the communications or have the plans attached, or, you know, whatever we attach to it, if you'd go in and check your settings and make sure that you are accepting emails in the settings. I believe it's the school messenger. Am I correct on that?
I would say probably the best, as a principal, a lot easier as a principal, when parents don't receive those messages, it's normally because we don't have updated contact information in Infinite Campus. Yes, the messages come from the school messenger program. School messenger pulls email addresses, phone numbers, cell phone numbers from Infinite Campus. You might be able to save yourself some time by just calling the secretary at your child's school.
And also check your cell phone's block settings. If you get phone calls from numbers you're not familiar with, then you just hit ignore and then you block it because it identifies it as spam. We have that a lot too, where parents just block, I don't know who that is, I'm not taking calls from that number anymore. That could have been the school district. So we would, you know, both what Mr. Wall said and make sure they're not getting blocked by your setup on your phone.
Do you guys have any updates on what's going to happen with variances? Like if there are variances that have been going on, are those going to be approved again, or?
I'm meeting with, most variances are elementary. I'm meeting with the elementary principals on Thursday. I don't foresee approval of variances being any different than in the past.
And secondary school variances, as long as the two site principals agree on the variance, those are regularly approved. As long as the site principals say it's okay, then it's kind of a rubber stamp.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else, Dr. Robinson?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, and we appreciate your diligence in communicating more often with the board and with the community. So everyone, check your settings, call your school if you need to, make sure that you're doing everything you can to receive the information as quickly as it's available. All right, we'll move on to item 6.1, approval of the accounts payable.
Move to approve the accounts payable.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Abstentions, disclosures?
I abstain.
I will disclose that I have a family member whose employer is on the accounts payable, so I will also be abstaining. Any other discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair abstains, Mrs. Wines abstains, but it still passes. Thank you. Item 7.1 is a final opportunity for comments from the public. All right, go ahead. Hop up and say your name and share your thoughts.
See how many of them you've got the same as mine.
My name is Gretchen Lutz, and I'm a parent of a second grader and a ninth grader, as well as a 20-year veteran teacher in Elko County. Just real briefly, I understand the distance learning experience. In 2002, so 18 years ago, I was the first student ever from Boise State to graduate without ever setting foot on campus until graduation day. So I fully understand the distance learning experience. I feel very strongly as a staff member and a parent that Elko County has not done a good job of communicating to teachers and parents, just in general communication. As a staff member and an employee of the district and as a parent, I've received very little communication since March. There's a lot of rumors, as all of you know, that are out there. From day to day, things are changing, and I would just ask that I think more communication is better, and consistent communication would alleviate a lot of parents' nerves and anxiety that people are having. I understand that you don't know the answers, and I don't even have things to contribute maybe to help you find the answers, but I think it's really important. Also, I have my parents of this past school year texting a lot right now, because from March to June, I became friends with them because I was zooming into their homes and things like that. And they do have anxiety, these parents, and I think more communication that you can provide to us helps alleviate some of that anxiety. Something that I'm concerned as a teacher, I don't know what my duties are going to be, what the expectations from you are. I signed my letter of intent. We don't usually get our contracts until later, and I fully understand that, and I fully intend to go back. I'm a teacher because I love teaching children. I love being with children, but I don't know what my duties are expected from you. And truly, I lay awake at night thinking, am I making the right choice going back? Because now I'm going to a job as a 20-year veteran. I don't know what I'm going to even be doing from one day to the next and what it's going to look like. And so somehow lots of praying and hopefully lots of communication over the next week or two, because now it is crunch time. And most classroom teachers, elementary teachers, are what I'm familiar with. By now, we're in our classrooms. We're making copies, we're putting together centers, we're building folders. I haven't even set foot on campus because I don't even know where to begin, what to do, what's going to be allowed, what's not going to be allowed, what that's going to look like. At grammar number 2, unfortunately, we lost our art teacher and our librarian, and those positions, rumor is that we're going to be sharing our art teacher again, as we once were in the past, and the library position is not being filled in a traditional way. And as a parent of a child that goes to that school, again, I don't want to step on that because that opens a huge can of worms, but really those kids deserve to have special teachers back in those places. And I know part of it is finding teachers that are certified in those areas to take those jobs. I know that's part of the situation. Recess, as of right now, I have heard that we're expected to cover our own class for each recess because we'll be going out separately, and I absolutely love that, love the outside time. I think the kids really need it, but our breaks, quick bathroom, drinks, being able to take our mask off, those kinds of things. In grammar number 2, my classroom, I have a swamp cooler that's up on the vaulted ceiling. Usually in September with my swamp cooler running by mid-afternoon, it's in the 80s, 85 degrees. I can tell you right now, wearing a mask in that classroom with the swamp cooler, the humidity, and 85 degrees, I can't even see how I can effectively teach, how my kids can learn, and we don't pose other health problems. I know the mask mandate is what it is, but I'm looking, some other teachers, we're looking at buying out of our own pockets portable air conditioning devices just so that we can do our job. So those are some concerns that I have as a teacher, but I appreciate all you're doing for our kids. I hope we're back to what all of us want as soon as it's safe for 5 days. Thanks.
Richard, thank you, and thank you for your passion. We know it's going to be a difficult thing for everybody going back to this. Thank you. Okay, Janae.
I just have another quick question. If a child is sick and doesn't go to school, will they be required to have a COVID test? If they are not tested, will they be required to be quarantined? And will the amount of days that they are allowed to miss school be changed if they are sick? You know, you don't want them to go to school, they don't have COVID, but you still don't want them there. Like, how does that work with this new life?
Basically, good questions. Do we have any good responses for those?
Well, again, we're waiting for guidance from the state before, I give you any sort of answer and then I'm wrong. I want to be careful, and I certainly want to be careful about the very good question that you just asked about attendance requirements. Will that change? Because ultimately, if a child is out because they are in quarantine for 14 days, it's not going to take very long before they would ease up their attendance requirements. So, great question. Don't know the answer to that one, but certainly we'll look into it. As far as the protocols for if a child is sick and they're out, then do we then require a COVID test? Again, we're waiting for guidelines on that before we say for sure. We also have to be able to work in concert with our health officer here in Elko County, and where we would be working to get those tests done. So that's something that I have an appointment with them this week to be able to work out some of those details about what a lot of this is going to look like specifically here in Elko County.
So along with that, say if your kid is sick, and as long as they're doing online school, say they are quarantined for 14 days, and they switch to the online, they haven't missed no days.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And we hope that that's the case for those children that are out or quarantining because there's a requirement to quarantine, and that they're able to continue with their studies, and then that doesn't become an issue. But if a child is out and they're sick for those 14 days because of COVID, and they're not able to do the work, then we've got to be sensitive to that and be able to adjust accordingly.
I had a question come in. Would we be willing to resurvey staff or parents about their feelings about the reopening if there's potentially been a shift?
We can survey at any time.
But will we?
You know, and there's nothing that precludes us from doing that. I just, you know, I want to just say that when we send a survey out and we compile the information, you know, that takes time and work and effort, and we want to make sure that we're using our time as wisely as we can right now. But if it is the will of the board, certainly we can send out a survey and get responses now. How quickly we can adjust when the opening of school is right around the corner based on the survey information, I don't want to say that we are able to make adjustments. You know, I want to be very transparent and upfront and tell you that we're in the crunch time right now, but we are always open to getting information from the community.
Any other comments? Mr. Cooney, did you
Start
have some?
reading?
If you've got some,
Okay,
share them.
I'll pull some of these right now. Okay, this one's from Robin Ackerman. As a parent of a 3-sport athlete in high school, if we did adopt the AB off Wednesday, AB schedule, student athletes in B group would miss many Fridays and would be in contact with teachers 1 day a week. How will our student athletes make up time? Would the school board consider having Fridays as virtual days instead of Wednesdays? Thank you. Shami Rodriguez, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your public service and dedication to youth of Elko County. None of us, but especially none of you, signed up for this. Hang in there and be positive. Once again, thanks so much for airing the meetings. They're informative, interesting, and even for the folks who disagree, we all can be informed with the convenience of not coming to central office. Yes, Mr. Fish's passing definitely leaves a hole on the board. I remember him saying at the last meeting, for any of you folks who don't like what this board is doing, you can take a shot at it the next election. Best regards, Shami. That's for sure. Penny Dodge, dear school board members, thank you for speaking up for our students, parents, and teachers. Thank you for exploring those other questions. Jennifer Taylor, thank you so much for your comments and remarks regarding either choosing masks or social distancing if possible, and our urge to get back to normalcy as soon as possible. Stephanie Alexander, if I'm to be 6 foot apart from my students, how am I able to help them one-on-one? How do I reach those students who need my help when I cannot get to them? And follow up, Stephanie Alexander again. First, Thank you for your hard work and understanding during this process. As a teacher in Elko County School District, I'm concerned that our voices are not being heard. I'm not going to speak for my colleagues, but only for myself. I want a learn environment that is safe for students and teachers. I feel wearing a mask is not the issue, but how as a teacher am I going to teach my students with ever-changing information? This uncertainty of school closures due to the positive test is not one I want to worry about daily. My question is, what is the best model for our students and teachers? Is it the hybrid model or all distance? The hybrid model puts a lot of extra work on teachers, but I am willing to put in the time. However, with the extra duties I'm going to be asked to complete, when will I have time to plan for my students? We need a day to plan and use a distance learning day to be successful. This day can also be used to contact our students one-on-one through the use of technology to give the extra sum of our students need. I hope the board will take this into consideration when making plan to go back to school. Okay, we're switching over now.
Yellow ones.
All right, from Kelly Carr, will teachers receive an additional 1-year term life insurance for the school year to teach? That way, when a teacher dies from COVID-19, their family doesn't have a lost income for life. 9,600 students in Elko County School District, time death rate of 0.0016, death rate yields 16 student deaths. Does the board acknowledge this fact? Also, Kelly Carr, how will we know when it's time to shift to full distance learning? Elko is already in red zone. If this doesn't warrant full distance learning, what will? I was surprised and disappointed that there was zero discussion during the last board meeting after 5 hours of public comment. The board didn't discuss any of it. They voted without discussion in 30 seconds and moved forward with what they wanted. You want to move that so I don't lose the whole dang thing? What they wanted, please be aware, this does not send a good message to your staff or to the public. Okay, Mr. McEnany, running AM. Oh, okay, I jumped. I tried to skip one, Keith, and you caught me. Kelly Carr again, will teachers be with medical conditions that are high risk be given an option of teaching online for Elko County School District? Mr. McEnany, running AM, PM sessions would not cut down half of the student contact time. It would cut out the lunchroom debacle and get each student in school daily for 3 to 3.5 hours. Every day, 3.5 hours is the same as every other day for 7 hours. Jamie McNally, could a survey be sent out asking the parents which they like better, AABB or ABABA? Has anyone thought of this idea? If so, I missed it in the conversation. Yeah, and this is Kelsey Simpson. It makes more sense to me to do a week where the A group would meet on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday would be online learning for everyone, while Wednesday at the school would be a day for thorough cleaning before the next group, Group B, would come in on Thursday and Friday. Then the next week, flip-flop the schedule with the kids, but always help keep Wednesday a day open for cleaning every week. This way, the kids are only exposed to being around one group of kids between cleaning instead of every other day, where COVID spread exposures could be much higher. What I'm concerned about with the 5-day in-person school week, rotating groups of kids every other day, where's the time being allotted for thorough cleaning between these groups? Are there going to be janitors there every night, working through the night to keep the schools clean and sanitized? I don't see this possible and feasible to be done to feel that school will be clean and safe for our children. Okay, Kelly Carr, if an extra prep day is not doable for a 4-day schools, then those 4-day schools could shorten their day by 1.5 hours per day, and then it would be equitable to both 5-day and 4-day schedules. James Smith, if when someone gets COVID, how will we manage the multiple lawsuits against Elko County School District with no liability insurance? Ty Tervord, why isn't distance learning still an option? Abigail Parkin, instead of the ABA schedule, how about A students go on Monday, Tuesday, and B students go Thursday and Friday, then alternate Wednesdays. This way childcare is more reliable and consistent, and students will have 5 days of school over a two-week period. All right. And Stacy Phillips, I was truly saddened by the news Mr. Fish's passing. He was an incredible asset to the board and to the Elko community. I am honored to have had the opportunity to work with him, sending my thoughts and prayers to the Fish family. Let me check again. David Chamberlain, I'm watching and you just voted for some schedule. What was the vote on? Is it AB, and then alternate every other Friday? Or was it AABB with Wednesdays for cleaning? It makes no sense. I believe it was to adopt the 3 addendums to
The two modifications regarding social distancing and face coverings. Those were the only pieces up for the vote.
Okay, Mr. Chamberlain, there you have the answer. Okay, Madam Chairman, I don't think I have any more public comment.
Okay, thank you. And we appreciate everyone who has sent in public comment, those who are present. And even if you are thinking the board is not listening, no one is listening. We are reading every comment. We are processing every comment. The reopening committee has tirelessly looked through all these comments and used that as part of what they are trying to do under the restrictions that we have. And so we do appreciate everyone's input, and I really appreciate people participating virtually with us. This has been a great opportunity for people to be more involved, and I would encourage people to continue to be more involved, not only with the board, but with your students at home and with your families, because if you put education as a top priority in your family, it's going to make a difference even through all these hard times. So thank you for participating. Do you have another comment?
Oh, just those that commented or asked questions for public comment, how do they get their questions answered? Okay. We read them, which is great, but how do they get their questions answered then?
Dr. Robinson, would you like to?
Well, I've been writing down as I hear questions, and I didn't catch anything that necessarily, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about the communication and some ideas that you have for communication, because I want to make sure that the information that's getting out is helping ease the anxiety. And we might be missing the mark. We are communicating, but maybe we need to talk a little bit about what that means. So I just, want a clarification, but I didn't hear anything that hadn't been discussed, so if there's a
Kelly
question that I missed.
Kelly Carr asked a couple of questions as it pertains to teachers, and I don't know if that's a question for the teachers union or what, but I'm not Kelly, so I mean, she can ask her own questions, but there were a couple of questions that pertain to teachers.
She asked questions about the life insurance and some of those other things which fall back in and are under the contract, the negotiated agreement. So, you know, and some of the other questions, in my mind, listening to the sitting through the board meeting 2 weeks ago, as well as this board meeting, looking at the presentations and the discussions, you know, I think most all of those questions, there are an awful lot of them, have been addressed at one point or another, you know, and there are a lot of questions, I know, as we were reading through 300
Yeah,
of those
absolutely.
things,
Let-
so.
Let's say they didn't want to listen to the 6-hour YouTube video.
Yeah.
How do they just email? Do they call? Like, what's the best way, I guess, for people to get their questions answered if they're not willing to, you know, sit down and listen or be here or listen to the YouTube?
Well, I think some of those are under the purview of their administrators too, and that information will need to be disseminated to them.
Well, yeah, of course, and not just teachers, I mean parents in general, just anybody who didn't want to sit down and take the time to listen to both of those videos. What's the best way to get those questions answered? Do they email, Facebook, call, like, what do you suggest?
Yes, to all of that, and whatever mode of communication is most convenient for them, most effective for them. A lot of the questions too, particularly that we got last week, there have been a lot of questions, as there was tonight, and a lot of discussion about the scheduling. And at this point, the scheduling is the ABA for the 5-day school week, and we took that information. I know they were in the form of questions, but we took that information and the committee met again and continued to take a look at those, the comments and the input that we received from the community. Some of the other questions about what are the protocols if somebody is sick, as I said, those will be coming out, and as soon as we have that information, we'll continue to push information out. But if there are questions that are left unanswered after the discussions that we have tonight, and we had 2 weeks ago, and as we continue to have them, yes, whatever mode of communication is most effective for the community, please utilize that vehicle and get your questions to your schools, to us, so that we can continue to, it helps us to form our plans as well, if we know what's on the mind of the community.
Yeah, so please reach out, and like Dr. Robinson said, whatever method is the easiest method for you to reach out. If you feel like you didn't get a question answered specifically, we might not have an answer yet for some specifics, but that question may have already been answered in the 6 hours. And if I understand not everybody wants to run a marathon, and that was it. That meeting was it. But there may have already been an answer. And so, a quick email or a quick phone call, that answer may already be out there. And so that is a simple way to say, hey, I didn't hear the answer to this question. Do you have an answer? And if there's an answer, absolutely, we will share the information. If there's not an answer, we can say, we don't know yet. We're working on that, or we're waiting on that. So, okay, hold on, Janae and then Caroline.
Sorry, I had a brain fart. Caroline, go first. I forgot it. We just talked about different ideas of different plans with this ABAB model. Does that mean that in the future we could switch our plan to one we talked about tonight, or are we set? Like, I know we're talking about we need to be flexible, right? Because at some point we might all go to distance learning. So is there an answer to that? Like, right now we know for sure we're going to start school the ABAB 5-day week, or could that change next board meeting?
And I'm going to point out, because a lot of our schools are 4-day, this 4-day is ABAB. So it's important to note that we have 4-day and 5-day schools in our community. So I don't want the 4 days to think, well, what does that mean for us? 4-day schools are still on a 4-day schedule. There's ABAB, and the 5 days are on the ABABA. I got all that right.
But just to
Would you like to
clarify
address-
that, is on the 5-day school week, the next week it's SWATs, correct? So, because I wanted to clarify for the gentleman, because we have talked about so many A's and so many B's tonight, that I think everybody is confused. So the current reopening plan is if your child is in group A, they will go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 week. The following week, they will go Tuesday, Thursday. And then they'll go back to Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So it'll be a constantly alternating schedule. So that's the current reopening plan for the 5 days. And if I'm correct on the 4 days, it's gonna be AB, AB. And that will be AB, AB every week? Okay, thank you.
So is that set for a certain amount of time, right? Like, or is this up for vote again in 2 weeks? Nobody knows. Just say you don't know.
Well, I think we give an answer that just adds to frustration, and
Yeah.
so I'm hesitant, but I have to be honest with you, everything is up for a vote next time we meet.
Okay.
Everything is up for change, because, again, things are changing so rapidly. What's really important, and we recognize this for families, is that there be some consistency in there, whatever that consistency is, and we provide it as much as we can. So the honest answer to your question is, yes, there could be a vote that changes everything because of something that may transpire between now and the next time the board is together to vote. But what motivates us is to get to consistency as quickly as we can.
The intent is there.
That is the intent. That is the intent. Because you hear the frustration from teachers. They want to know what the first day is going to look like. And
so the intent is that we're sticking with this. We hope that something isn't going to throw this off.
That is the intent, is to stay consistent. But we also don't want to be closed to something that may present itself that would be a better option. Whatever that may be. It may be in a cleaning protocol, it may be in whatever it is. We want to stay open to that. But we approach this with the intent of consistency and getting information as quickly as we can so people can make plans in your own lives.
That clears it a lot. Thank you. Yeah.
Right, Janae remembered and then Gretchen.
Sorry. Okay, so do you have a time frame of letting the school know when, if we know, when our children will be attending? Because we got the survey that said, do you plan to send your kids back to school? Do you plan to do online? I don't know yet because you guys haven't had the answers yet. You're still working on certain things that will be a deciding factor on me, like if I'm sending my kids back. So is there a time that we need to let the school know so they know how many kids to plan for?
As far as whether or not a family wants to choose to go distance learning, one of the mandates for us is that we have to make that, and we want to, but we have to make that available if a family wants to go distance learning. Certainly pure distance learning. Mm-hmm. Certainly, like you are planning, we're able to plan better when we have that information, and so do you. So, we're as the sooner that decision can be made, I think it helps everybody to do the appropriate planning, but we certainly understand that there may be some components that you're waiting to hear. We're not going to take away the ability for a family to be able to start the school year in distance learning, pure distance learning.
Okay, thank you.
Can you just clarify, when they say 50% of room capacity, what designates room capacity? Is it like a 22-to-1 ratio teacher-student, or like this room is 120 people? I'm across the street, give me a full class of kids 5 days a week and let me come teach in this room. So is it based on fire code? What is room capacity? And then to say that it's half of the capacity.
Well, the room capacity is certainly part of it, but the other piece of it is being able to have that capacity and also the social distancing. That piece, that's part of that. So when they're talking about a classroom, it's how many children do you put into a classroom? And so if we've got a classroom with 22 children, then we do 50% of that capacity. Did that answer?
It did. I'm having troubles in some spots where we've got room to social distance with more kids in the room. It makes
As a
And I'm
sub,
not
It's
trying
by the
to-
class size, it's by the class size.
well, some of these rooms I sub in are like, the trailers are tiny and they're packed with all the kids in there. So like, that's hard.
Yeah.
That's a hard.
It is, and we're looking at sometimes room by room.
Yeah.
Because we have to consider that.
Wow.
So school by school, like looking down in the future, is that something that could change schools? Or is it pretty much going to be, if Elko makes a change, it's all of Elko and Spring Creek, like each individual area?
I think I need you to clarify for me what you mean by change.
Some of the schools, like the schools that have a lot of the trailers and the modulars, obviously their capacity load is very different than the load at the elementary school. And the big old classrooms like at Grammar, they're huge classrooms, a lot of them. So it provides you more space, which, I mean, is that then open a possibility that you could go back 5 days, all your kids sooner because you've got more physical space to work with?
So in the smaller schools, and we've made this announcement already, that there will be the ability for them to be full because of the numbers that they have, and if the population would allow for that in their smaller schools. As far as the other schools go, one of the things that the governor had indicated when he came out with his metrics is that he was going to look at it by zip code and look at what is happening in a community by zip code and get that granular at it. And so we can take a look at, as far as the variance, which is the only mechanism we have to be able to do anything greater than 50% of the class. So in order to be able to do that, we have to apply for and be approved for variances. And we may be able to do that, or may only be able to look at that by community, given the condition that Elko County is in right now, the situation that they're in right now.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kim McKnight. I just had a question. That survey that you were talking about that asked if we were social distancing or if we were doing distance learning or going back to school, did you guys actually put that out? Because it didn't have Elko County School District on it anywhere, so I wouldn't take it.
I think that was a school by school survey.
School by school survey.
Okay, because it came up and so it was on Facebook and so people started sharing it, but it didn't say like Elko County School District anywhere. So I didn't know if it was a school or if it was like a district thing, or like some random people took it that were from different schools. So I didn't know. I was just wondering if it was from you guys or if it wasn't. You guys haven't put one out? Awesome. I didn't know who was getting the information, so.
That's a good question to clarify. I know individual schools sent out surveys asking, will your student be coming back or will they be,
There was just one circulated on Facebook that didn't have any like heading, so I didn't know who was actually collecting the information, so I was like, well, that's weird.
My question would be, did it come from the Elko County School District Facebook page, or was
Nope.
it just on? So
It
that
was
could
just
have
like
been
people sharing, so that's why I was like,
some
that's
random
weird.
individual that made that.
I know.
Yeah, so.
So I didn't know, that's what I was asking. So I don't know if it was the same one, or was
Mine
yours from
came
your
from
school?
my school.
Oh, so that's perfect, okay.
So how come the school district hasn't put out one then? One asking you if your kid's gonna go to school or not, 'cause I'm the same way. I don't know if my kids are gonna go to school or not.
The schools have been putting those surveys out individually. So if you have not received it yet, we'll be speaking with administrators and find out where they are in that.
That
I haven't
brings
received
up
one
the
for any of my
question, are our principals getting the same information to send out? So you're getting a consistent message rather than waiting for somebody to post something on Facebook, your social media, and it takes misinformation, and that spreads a whole lot faster than the true information does, So, everybody's got to be coordinated, and the site principals can't be doing kind of their own thing out there bouncing around. So, and that's the only way that I know of that's going to relieve some of the anxiety that you people have with the questions that you've got. As a board member, I sit back and I look at this, and you've got the governor, you know, the decision we made during our first meeting 2 weeks ago was to start the school year on the 30th or 31st. The reality is, we may not know what mode we're in until the 29th. Just depending on if we're in a red zone, if we're in phase 1 or metric 3 or whatever, that we've got to react to that. And everybody, you know, we can set up the plans and have everything lined out, but when it comes right down to it, you better wait and see. Call tomorrow. It's like selling your cattle. Selling cattle. The price at the sale yard today is $1.50. Tomorrow it's $1. Next day it's 10 cents. So it's all over the board. And I truly understand the frustration that's being expressed by, you know, everybody that made comments at our last meeting as well as this one. But we're not driving the train.
Mr. Petty, we are meeting with administrators every week, and so that we can coordinate these efforts. You know, and schools, again, are very unique, and they all, you know, in their site-based management are making approaches unique to the school community, but we are meeting to make sure that we are as much on the same page as we have page available to be on.
And I had one more comment from Sandy Moon. She says teachers need to collaborate and share online materials, and that will ease a lot of frustrations in putting all those materials together, because one teacher doesn't have to do it all. You can share and collaborate. And just so everyone watching knows, the board sitting up here, we have frustrations as well. This is not a fun position to be in right now. You know, it's difficult to say, boy, we wish we knew the answer, we don't. And that's life. But right now, it feels like there's a lot of questions that we don't have the answers to. And if we have an answer today, it might be different tomorrow. And that's really frustrating. As a parent, if you trained your children that way, they would be crazy, and so would you, right? But as a school right now, where we usually have things lined out, teachers are in their classrooms, they're already putting things together, they're making things happening, they're ready for their students before their students arrive. This is a frustrating time for everybody. It's a frustrating time to be on the board, it's a frustrating time for parents, teachers, administrators, you know, all the staff at central office, our new superintendent. This is such a challenge, and we just have to keep plowing on and hope that we can make it through and do what's best for kids. And I will just say that over and over. We're trying to do what's best for kids, trying to make every opportunity for a great education available for them, regardless of what the circumstances are around us. And I have confidence that the parents in Elko County, the teachers in Elko County, administrators are going to make it happen. We're going to provide education for our kids. We're going to get through this difficult time, and we're going to be able to move forward. But that does not take away the current frustration right now. Are there any other comments? All right, we didn't even do a half marathon tonight, so congratulations, everyone. All right, that moves us to item 8.1, adjournment of the meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and we are adjourned. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us here and virtually. We appreciate your attendance and your involvement.